think of an auditory, it could be a lecture, it could be a video, but something auditory that taking in the way they said it, or the way something was presented, how it really affected you, or it moved you, or it left an impression and you remember it. For me, I can think of, there's a Christian spoken word poet / rapper named Propaganda, and he did a video on the gospel. And it was video, but even if there was no video, just the audio of it, the way he broke the gospel down into God, our sins, pain, everyone, life. And broke it down and talked about each thing, and rhymed it. And I've watched it a couple times, but I'll never forget the gospel about our sins, pain, everyone, life, because of the way that he presented that.
That's cool.
What was a visual in a teaching that really made an impression? Some kind of visual that somebody used that really stuck with you, or you were really moved by it. Something you remember. Matt, you look like you got one.
I do. Two, actually. One, when I first heard the Worldview Tree back in 2006, I mean, like a lot of people, it made sense. I'm like, wow, I get it, because I enjoy agricultural stuff. I like being outside, it makes sense. And then the second one wasn't because of a specific teacher, but it was God, who was my teacher at the moment, and he showed me a picture of the hydraulic ram pump. And the purpose of the hydraulic ram pump is to bring water where there is no water. Water brings life, just as we are called to be vessels that are called to carry the gospel where there is no gospel. It's like an illustration.
Awesome.
So it was a visual, and that has been kind of my thing for years. So.
Steve?
No idea.
No idea? Let's see. It can be a difficult one.
I'm visual, so a lot of them have. But I'll actually go back to one of your teachings this year. You were talking about how to prepare your teaching, and you said one of the most difficult things is to get, and then you drew a bunch of squiggly lines, and then you drew a little arrow moving down, and then dot, and then line, dot, line, dot, line.
Squiggly frames of bullet points.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, but it touches so clearly what you have to do as a teacher when putting your thoughts together, and that process of going from just scattered jumble to systematic thought. I was like, yeah, that's the perfect illustration for that. So,
Cool.
that's awesome. Yeah, way to go.
I think I mentioned this a while ago, but there was a guy, Juan Carlos Ortiz, who was teaching in a church, and he was like a conference, and he didn't have any visuals, but he was very visual in the way he said, like he created word pictures, and he was talking about people and how we look at they're like a fruit tree, and we look at their fruit and we judge them by their fruit when we really need to look down at the roots and what they're going on.
The belief tree,
It's
except
like
just
that,
spoken.
except that it's actually about how we look at people, and do we look at their fruit and then get mad at their fruit and try to change their fruit, or we go down to the root and let them down in the roots.
Yep.
So
That's interesting.
I mean that was in 1984.
Wow. And that was just him speaking too. It wasn't
Right.
even an actual, but it created a picture that was stuck with you.
Right.
That's really neat.
I put, at like a staff devotion and learning at my camp, a speaker showed like the video of the Bridge Master,
Mhm.
as you know, so that one really stuck. And then the Trinity tree, when I was like in grade 9, I think. I
Wow.
remember my, I think it was my gym teacher did this picture of the Trinity and how it like all goes in and is one thing. And I just remember after that, every conversation we had about, well, what is the Trinity? And it's such a complicated thing to describe. And I always remember thinking, but it's so easy. Like, just because I would always think back to that
It's the
thing.
Trinity tree, of course.
Couldn't
I
explain
love
it.
that.
I don't even know what the Trinity tree is.
That's really cool. Belief tree is something that it that visual changes the way I think, which is kind of cool. If you can get a visual to change the way somebody thinks, and that it becomes something that helps them remember, I think that's really cool. That, and then also, I don't remember, I think it was someone was teaching Gospel of Mark during my SBS, and they put up a picture of Christians in the Colosseum. It's that old famous picture where the Christians are gathered together and they're kind of like letting out the lions. And that never forget that image. It brought the script. That picture changed my interpretations for that entire book. It was really powerful. Yeah, Don Gillen taught Mark. And last, what was a hands-on activity that you cannot forget from a teaching? Something hands-on that you did. It doesn't even have to be a big activity. It could be just something that people gave you during the teaching that you've kept with you, but something tactile or kinesthetic. For me, I can immediately think of one that Erin did. She gave us these little essentials kits, which was a play off of one of Brian Regan's comedy routines about the essentials kit. And so she talked about that comedy routine. I think she might have, I don't remember if she played part of it or not, but then she gave us these little essentials kits, these little matchboxes that she had covered with construction paper. And if you push it open, it just said Jesus on the inside. And I still have that to this day. So that was something that really stuck out to me, really made a big impression. So, yeah.
And I did this leadership development course, and they're really big on doing stuff that people can take away, and so there's billions of them. One was, this woman got up and said she felt like God had told her that we were each had a pearl. And so she had made all these little black boxes, and I'm telling you, they're like this big. They're like that circumference around the top, and then they're just little, and then she had gotten these pearls. I think they were fake pearls, but
Yeah.
anyway, pearls, and she gave them to each one of us. And there was like 40 people in this group.
That is a lot of extra preparation to
Yeah.
put in.
But
See,
it's
for me,
made an
I
impact.
yeah, that's super impactful. But I immediately think like that's so much preparation time. I could be like studying for the teaching or something like that, and instead
What
of making
happens
little
was staff
boxes.
end up.
But that's a
wrapping-
huge impression.
Staff helped do it,
Yeah,
so
that's really cool.
it was like 14 staff.
I can think of so many. Deb was in my school and one of our teachers,
Oh.
so every lecture had one. But probably the one that was most, well, no, there's a couple, but I'll just say one of them. She had us build little Jerusalems and burn them down outside.
Nice.
Awesome.
And
Yeah, I remember
you know, it could be a waste of time, except for the fact that when you actually light this little city that you built on fire and you're sitting there and you kind of want to step back further and further as the heat rises, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there thinking, what would it be like in Jerusalem when the whole place is on fire? How hot would it be? How much would you want to get out? How fast would you want to get away? And just like you'd lost everything that you just worked for. I mean, it was very impactful. And then you get to see the charred ground every day that you go to class for the rest of the year
Yeah.
and part of the next year.
Yeah.
I drew someone in our class.
Did it not burn down?
No, we once every hour drew some burn down.
Oh, nice.
We just threw it out.
Can I tell one that I did?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
I felt like I did the lecture of Leviticus in England, and I felt like when I was reading it, I had the serious contrast of what the Israelites, the people around them were doing, and what God wanted them to do, and so I actually had all the staff there. We had the students file down and go down to the class below, and I had set it up like a temple, and it was a temple of Moloch, and I had a guy out there with the baby and the people worshiping and like candles.
Like a real baby?
No,
Okay.
we almost did, and we're like, no, we can't do that.
Too
It's
far.
too weird.
Too far.
Too far. And so, but anyway, that was the
Ooh,
very
man.
first thing they did. And they came back up, and I was like, so how do you feel? And one old lady, I just remember, she's like, I hated it. I hated it. She was like in her 70s.
I get chills just kind of thinking of seeing an illustration
Yeah.
like that.
It was pretty intense, but it was really great because
Yeah.
they lived in a way through seeing what it was like and what the Israelites were coming through. And so why God was saying,
Yeah.
I want you to be holy.
Yeah. But what a way to get them to really engage in your teaching right off the bat. That's awesome. Might steal that someday.
Please.
I encourage you guys when you're listening to lectures, no matter where it is, I'll make notes when someone does an illustration or mentions a really good question. Like I'll throw up illustration and put it in parentheses, be like da 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 da, or picture someone used, or just to grab things that you see that are really good or really effective. I did that from Raju. I don't remember what it was, but he had a question he asked that was really good, and then something he said afterward about it, and I put illustration, wrote that down, so that someday I can look back and use it because it was really good. Yeah. So.
At our base in New Zealand, we had something called the Lordship of Christ Day. I feel like it was a whole day of kinesthetic things, but it was like you started out with worship. They've been teaching on like, okay, what does it mean to make Christ Lord of your life, and then we started out with like worship, but then we moved outside. They had stacked up all these picnic tables, and we were all walking around like worshiping. And then if you felt like God was giving you a word, you'd climb all the way up the top and you'd say it. And then you come down, and then like
Nice.
people were, there's a roof, and people had to fall off, like do a trust fall off this roof. It wasn't super high, but off this roof into everyone's arms. And then we all had to walk over, all the girls had to walk over top of the guys to get into the room, and that was like the inner room of the temple. And we had to walk across the guys and like speak out truth. And then when you got there, you had to fight your way through people to get inside. So you had to like fight for your faith. And then after that, it was like you brought a burnt offering and a sin offering, I think, and you had to bring something symbolic for it of like, I'm giving my guitar because I'm giving it to the Lord, or like the sin offering was something different. And then after that, we went and got anyone who wasn't baptized that wanted to be was baptized in the river, and then we came back and we had communion together. We had a time of worship.
Oh,
It went
that's
from,
quite a day.
it went from 9 in the morning until 3 in the morning, and it was like
3
the
in the
whole day.
morning?
3 in the morning.
Oh my
That's amazing.
But the whole day was like, if you ask anyone, if you
That's
ask Chris, she'll tell you every single thing that happened because you couldn't forget it.
That's really impacting. Wow. My goodness. That's really cool. So, I mean, looking back, we can all probably, if we spent enough time thinking, we could all find things from these different learning styles that really affected us. And obviously, depending on what we're more prone to, they will have affected us some more than others. Visuals and kinesthetic things always leave a huge impression on me. And so, as teachers, we want to be finding new ways to be creative or using the resources of people around us. So looking more, identifying if someone's visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. You guys, for the sake of time, I'll try to go through this kind of quick. But pay attention to words or phrases they use. Visual people see, bright, focus, clear perspective, big picture. Auditory, hear, tune in, discuss, paraphrase sounds. Kinesthetic, feel, touch, angle, excite, grasp, solid sense. I say it, I feel all the time. Feel this, da da da. Just different things that people say, or different words that they could be prone to, just in identifying who people are in the classroom, what their learning style is. You guys still around, or do you want me to? I'm gonna turn it.
It's okay.
Notice their way of being. Visual, will imagine pictures in head, draw pictures on paper. Visual people, or also kinesthetics, maybe doodling. Auditory will listen and then repeat back what you just said. Kinesthetic will be doodling, tapping, taking notes, or jotting down ideas while you are talking. I think sometimes teachers, at least in traditional school, can come down on students for doing stuff like that. Saying, I've had teachers come up to me and be like, hey, focus. When I was really engaged with what they were saying, I was just finding something to keep me engaged. Notice how they study, take notes, and behave during lecture. Visual people take detailed notes, doodle or draw pictures, use color. That's me. I try to bring pictures into my notes on my laptop all the time. Auditory, take few notes, often sit back in their chairs during lecture and just take it all in. Steve Robs. Yeah. Sit back, taking in what's happening, what's being said. Kinesthetic, fidgety, often have a part of their body moving. doodle, play with things. Anna, when she was teaching learning styles, and Titus in the fall, she had 3 juggling balls that she brought into class. She used them for an illustration, and then during a break, the kinesthetic people ended up with them in their hands. And it was me, Ryan Pauls, and Jaredin, I think.
Yeah.
And the 3 of us, like during the break, we're like, where'd those balls go? And we ended up holding them for the rest of her
I'm
lecture,
playing with them.
tossing them back and forth in our hands, and because we were kinesthetic, it was like our thing. Observe their desk or office space. Visual, usually neat because they like to see an ordered environment. Hello, Sarah. Auditory, like order, but it's not as important as it is to a visual person. Kinesthetic, don't see disorder, so they may have piles everywhere.
I have a fight in the middle,
Yeah.
Of which one?
because I am too busy at the moment to make it neat, so there's big
Yeah.
piles.
Even, I mean, for me, sometimes my desk in the office is a mess, but I like to order my Sharpie pins in front of my picture, and
That's awesome.
yeah, it's little things.
I
think it's-
we now know how to mess with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't even think about it. Justin Fraser already does. But yeah, as we're going through these things, think of what you do. It's kind of an interesting thing. IQs, visual. Look to the upper left to see past visual memory. Look to the upper right to construct a picture from what you are saying. I thought this is pretty interesting. Sarah's trying it right now to see what it does. But then just with the way your brain works, that's what your tendency will be. Auditory, they look level left to remember a specific sound, look level right to construct a sound. Thinking of sounds. Kinesthetic, look to the lower right. People who tend to look down are likely accessing how they feel about a situation. I thought that was really interesting. I had a teacher, very kinesthetic teacher, my history teacher in high school. Whenever you were talking to him, he would be looking at the ground like this. The whole time you would talk to him. Drove me nuts because he almost never made eye contact with you. Or in class if you're talking, but he'd be doing this the whole time. And he'd be listening, but being kinesthetic, he was looking down, accessing how he felt about the situation. But that was just his tendency, is he would always be looking down. So with that in mind, looking at the way our brain works, just left and right brain dominance is something that's really common, and people often go over a bit in learning styles. This picture drives me nuts, and can you guys guess why?
Because the right is on the left
And the left is on the right, yeah. Yeah, well, you know.
I don't like bald people either.
So left brain, logical, sequential, rational, analytical, objective, look at parts, verbal. Right side of the brain, random, intuitive, holistic, synthesizing, subjective, looks at wholes, visual. We all use both sides of our brain, but often people are more dominant on one side or the other. And there are different ways that people will have connections between the two. Different things will help bring somebody from focusing on the right to come to the left. This is a really common image. She's using Titus all the time. I don't know why they make this side look so boring,
Yes, it is not.
which it's not. The picture frustrates me. It was definitely drawn by a creative person
Who doesn't think left brain is?
who doesn't think the left brain has value.
Who wants to free people from the left side?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But when you think about it, this could be the perspective of a lot of people, which I don't necessarily think is true. But I just found that pretty funny. So, left hemisphere, linear, sequential, processes in order, list maker, good at math and following directions. Where right hemisphere, holistic, more random, fluid, spontaneous, more impulsive, move from one task to another, rebels at the thought of a schedule.
That's pretty extreme though.
Yeah, those are, and
Definitely.
we definitely balance both, but I can see ways that I can tend to be a little more right-brained in the sense of moving from one task to another.
We have both,
Yeah,
so it's just.
it's just an interesting differences. Left can be more symbolic, deals with symbols such as letters, words, and mathematical. Where right, more concrete, wants to see, feel, and touch the real object, prefers to see words in context, not just looking at the single word. Logical, for the left hemisphere, uses information piece by piece to solve a problem, seat of reason. Right hemisphere, intuitive, solves problems on a hunch, decisions based on feelings, seat of passion and dreams. Left hemisphere, more verbal, prefers talking and writing. Right hemisphere, nonverbal, prefers drawing and manipulating objects. So you can see that we obviously use both frequently. I think some people use both in note taking. Some people draw in their notes while they're taking their notes. Objective, realistic, wants to know the rules and follow them. That's the left hemisphere. Constantly at war with the subjective, idealistic, creative process with emotions, right hemisphere. So obviously we use both and function in both sides of our brain all the time. But during class, depending on how the class is done, it'll draw more out of one side than the other. And if you can keep both sides of people's brains engaged by kind of getting them to bounce back and forth from different things, it can actually help them pay attention better, which I thought was pretty interesting. So in doing a little brainstorming, what are teaching activities we can do to relate to the left brain? The more logical, mathematical words. What do you guys think? If you're doing activities, you want to kind of trigger people's left brain thinking. What are things you can do in class?
Make lists.
Make lists? Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Lists.
The discussion has to be left brain.
Discussions. Verbal, for sure. What else? What other activities? Discussions, lists. What other things? What do you guys think? This is mainly just discussion for our benefit, so we can be thinking of when we're doing teachings, what can we be doing?
Basically all of those.
So exercises maybe that have a lot of directions to them.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that can make a difference between which side of the brain people are engaging. Very structured activities, you guys are gonna do this, this, and this, or very open-ended, maybe. Okay, you guys have this time to do this. Gives you more creativity.
I think the observation stuff in SBS is very
Yes.
left brain.
Mm-hmm.
You're
You're
focusing
doing
details.
a workshop that you're
Mhm.
observing.
Yeah.
Like when I said in Isaiah, I do workshops on sin, judgment, and restoration. That's basically that same thing.
Yeah.
I'm having them look for, and what are they?
Mm-hmm.
What are the different sins? What are the different judgments? What are the different restorations?
Mhm.
What else do you guys think?
I guess like for the objective, realistic, on some of the rules. So teaching, just saying, okay, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe. I mean, have room for creativity and help them discover it.
Really clear
But
though.
clear instructions.
Mm-hmm. Something I thought of from SBS is the King's timeline.
That's cool.
The timeline, you can be a bit creative because you can pull in your own colors and stuff, but it's very left brain of dates. You want the dates to be exact. You're drawing this timeline, which I loved. That was probably one of my favorite assignments. But that's a very left brain assignment that we've done in SBS. So what about right hemisphere? What are activities in classes you could do for that? I know Taiwan, for their Psalms assignments, can't you do something artistic for the Psalm assignment? You could keep a creative journal for your Psalm assignments. I don't know if they still do that. They used to, not too long
We used to
ago.
have, when I was in SBS here, we used to have a creative, we could do a creative assignment for songs.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of our applications would incorporated something creative as well,
Yeah.
so.
So that would be a more right hemisphere activity. Really engaging.
There was a guy in in an SBS over in England that all his applications were paintings.
Wow.
Storytelling falls into the right side.
Mm-hmm.
And just building the passion in SBS, I can see that totally. You help people connect to the story as you story tell something
Yeah.
that they're reading.
You had said something about you had to create Jerusalem and then burn it.
Mm-hmm.
Creating Jerusalem, yeah.
Creating Jerusalem, yeah.
I had on my SBS a guy who was really theatrical.
Mm-hmm.
So when he did Colossians and then when he did Ezekiel, he did a drama, and it wasn't like a little skit, it was like major.
Wow.
And so Ezekiel, we had class at night, which we didn't have at all
Mm-hmm.
in other,
Wasn't.
yeah, we only had morning. And so, but we had it at night because it could get dark, and he darkened the whole room, and he made the classroom so all the chairs were, our desks and chairs were around a circle, and from the ceiling he hung tires and like bicycle tires and all this paraphernalia, and then he put on a white sheet like a toga type of thing, and he did this whole monologue,
Wow.
Wow.
and it stuck with me.
Yeah.
I got it.
Wow, that's impressive.
That's neat. In Titus, for our Reaching Oral Communicators lecture, usually we'll give them time to write a story. Take 5 minutes, write a story, put together a song, something creative that can help reach oral
Yeah.
communicators, but that's totally right hemisphere, doing something creative like that.
At my church, when I worked with an addiction recovery group, and one of the things I had to do was write a psalm for
Mhm.
that and just kind of process some of their feelings and stuff. That was a really powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's
connecting
neat.
with that. Agreed.
Yeah. Cool. Definitely things we want to be thinking about. Or brain lecture. So some people say this is left versus right brain. You've got the filing cabinet and the exploding closet. Some people would say this is an extreme. This was probably made by a left brain person. As where the picture was made by a right brain person. So you can even see people's biases coming out in different illustrations.
It's extreme.
So when it comes down to left and right brain things though, both sides of our brain are involved in every human activity. But the more we can engage both halves, the better people's ability to retain what was taught to them will be. It increases their retention and usually their focus as well. The potential for learning is so much higher when you really engage both and you don't just focus completely on, I think left brain is probably tends to be the more common tendency for teachers. But when you can really engage both sides of the brain, people's ability to remember and retain what you're teaching them grows substantially. And so whichever side of the brain is maybe more dominant when you're teaching, you want to see how you can adjust to the other. Any comments about that?
Yeah, this is also how you store your information. So like you get stuff from your lecture and you put it in, like for a left brain, you put it into a file and basically you can take it out and retrieve it and spit it out. For the right brain, you're putting it into the closet, and obviously it takes a little longer to pull it out, the information, because it's lost in there. And so, but what happens is that the right brain person can take it out and might be creative with it and put it with other things. And so there's good things on both sides.
Yeah.
So the left brain person can probably bring it out quickly, verbatim, list, they got it. The right brain person was like, just a minute, in my head for this thing, and then pull it out and go, oh yeah, that relates to this, and this relates to this. And so it's like it kind of attaches itself. So they're
Yeah.
both really good things.
Yeah. One can bring it out verbatim, the other can help pull other things together with it, which is really cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. Left brain and right brain, depending on the tendency, can also affect the way we problem solve as well. So if we're looking at thinking and problem solving, there's two different ways called convergent and divergent. Most of you have probably heard of this already. Just in reviewing this really quickly, convergent is coming to a point. So you have the different facts, and it all comes to one conclusion. When convergent people are thinking, there is one correct answer to this problem. Whatever the problem is, there's one correct answer. I would think this would be more of a left brain thing. Taking the facts, finding one correct answer. There's one thing to find. And so even in our question asking and the kind of discussions we facilitate, we may be facilitating different things. A convergent discussion, where you're trying to come to one conclusion on something, or a divergent, which we'll talk about next. Is it okay if I go to the next slide?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of inductive.
Yeah,
This is feedback.
I never noticed that before, yeah.
that's a really good thought. Divergent is moving or extending in different directions from a common point. So this is more of the idea that there could be multiple answers. There's no universal correct answer, but from a central idea, you go out from a central point, you go out to different ideas of what the answer to that could be. Now I would consider this more of a right brain thing, because it's more creative, it's less structured. So even the kinds of discussions and questions you ask in a classroom can be convergent or divergent. So even the way you facilitate discussions can be more of a left brain or a right brain thing, just simply by the questions that you ask, which is really interesting. And so being proactive about asking different kinds of questions. A question may be where you guys are coming together to answer one problem, bringing different ideas to come to one conclusion, getting the left brain more involved, whereas you could start with kind of a common point, and from that just extend out anywhere to thinking of different ideas or answers for it. Now, a caution with discussions like this is they can take you someplace you never intended to go, and then trying to get people back can take some time, but it also engages the right side of the brain. And as you do this,
Yeah, this is good though for problem solving. You kind of want to say, this is our, this is what we're aiming to figure out to do. What can we, let's see, I'm just like a stimulus. This is, I don't know, I can't think of an example. because
Moralistic therapeutic reason.
Well,
Oh,
yeah.
that's the
Yeah, I'm
meaning, I
thinking
guess.
more of like something that's more practical, like,
Like a skill.
okay, like getting a card for the cafeteria. Okay, getting a card for the cafeteria, we have one idea, it's good for the cafeteria, but then we could just split out and say, actually, it would be good for security, because we could go into the other rooms. It could be good for the library, we could use it for the library. Like, that would be going off from
Mhm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there is a type of thinking that we want people to be able to do this,
Yeah.
because
absolutely.
let's get more ideas and make it better.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
It's actually a really good idea with the doors.
yeah. There we go. We'll bring that up sometime.
they are wanting to do it.
So basically, divergent is an opportunity to generate many ideas,
Yeah.
where convergent is coming to a select solution, the
Yeah.
best solution. So divergent is many ideas versus convergent being the best solution.
Mhm.